As an anti-diet registered dietitian, I've spent most of my career helping people heal their relationship with food after leaving diets behind for good. But along the way, there are a few common pitfalls I see people falling into time and time again on this intuitive eating journey. So in this video, I'll share more about the most common mistakes I see people making as they ditch diets and how you can avoid them yourself. So we're not going to waste any time and get right into the first one, which is using good or bad labels to talk about food and eating. And this also goes for phrases like guilty pleasures or indulgences or saying that food is worth it or describing it as junk. The common thread here is that you're moralizing those foods and those food choices and separating them into the binary thinking of categories that are good or bad. And that automatically flips that switch in your brain that causes you to think about foods in terms of what you should or should not have. And I can speak from both personal and professional experience. Neither one is helpful for reframing some of those critical thoughts as you're working on your relationship with food. The reality is simply not that black and white because those junk foods might actually be more convenient or faster to prepare if you're tight on budget or have no time to cook. Your guilty pleasure might be something that you've been avoiding or restricting, but in reality could very much show up in regular meals and snacks. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that there is a lot of nuance in the ways we think about foods, and it's not just good or bad, healthy or unhealthy, things you can or can't have. So here's how to avoid this mistake when you're done with dieting. Just take a little bit of time and run a quick audit on the language you use to talk about food. What is it that you catch yourself saying over and over, or what phrases kind of slip out of your mouth without much thought as to what they mean? And if you've seen some of my other videos, you already know I'm a big fan of journaling. So feel free to open up a notes app in your phone, grab a piece of paper and something to write with, and spend a little time thinking about these questions. I want you to ask yourself, where do I hear these labels or phrases? Ask yourself, do I actually believe that to be true about whatever that food is? And what words or phrases could I use instead that are more neutral and less judgmental? If you're finding this helpful, be sure to like or save this video so you can come back to it later. And if you haven't already, you can also subscribe for more videos like this. All right, the next big mistake I see people making when they're trying to eat more intuitively is continuing to use an app to either track their macros or count their calories. And before you come for me, let me just say, I understand that this sounds counterintuitive, right? Because we've always been told that this is something we should be doing and that it's helpful for managing our diet. But I think we have to pause and be a little more critical in our thinking about this. We need to ask, what is it actually helpful for? I won't argue, it is certainly helpful for restricting your caloric intake. It's also helpful for making sure you get plenty of grams of protein. And it's especially helpful for creating a distraction when you're just trying to enjoy a meal. If you're really trying to focus on intuitive eating, continuing to use these tracking apps is completely counterintuitive to that. And this can have a time and a place. So for a little more nuance, just think of someone with diabetes who needs to know how many carbohydrates they have in a meal so they can correctly dose their insulin. An app that helps you count your carbohydrates would be really helpful. But that's for an entirely different purpose. And if we read between the lines, we start to hear what that coded language around tracking macros and counting calories is really about. It's saying, I need to limit and control how much I eat so I don't gain weight. And it's a time-consuming, inaccurate process. These tools just aren't the best way to account for the normal and natural variability of nutrition in different foods or recipes. Apps are also notoriously difficult when it comes to estimating portion sizes, and we as humans tend to underestimate the amount we eat. And finally, these tools are only as good as the databases they're pulling from, and because they are so ubiquitous within diet culture, it means there's a lot of user-generated content that may or may not be complete or accurate. But beyond those issues we've already mentioned, my biggest concern as a dietitian is the way these tracking apps can become a slippery slope into even more disordered eating habits, or in some cases, a full-blown eating disorder. Now, I'm not saying that everyone who tries or uses a tracking app will go on to develop an eating disorder, but it is such a common dieting behavior that I have seen it in almost every person I've worked with who meets the criteria for disordered eating. Now, the bottom line is your body just doesn't need you to track every single calorie or every bite you take. Now, these tools offer great benefits like structure and predictability and a safe zone that we can feel confident eating in. And all of that can be a good thing. But in the long run, they also distance you from your taste preferences and can mask things like hunger and fullness cues. Building trust in your food choices is an entirely different topic and one for another video, but just know there are so many other ways to build in that flexible structure you might be looking for that don't do further damage to your relationship with food. The way to avoid this is much easier said than done, but I need you to delete those apps and resist the urge to download them again. Instead, I want you to think about this. What would it be like to eat a meal without knowing every detail about the calorie or nutrition information? How would you feel? It's okay to admit that you would feel anxious or worried or uncomfortable. But it's also okay to admit you might feel a sense of relief by not having to rush to your phone immediately to input what you just ate. And it's okay to admit you want a taste of that food freedom and know what it's like to sit down for a meal and be calm and relaxed and present. And it's okay to say, I want the food freedom to have what I eat be based on what I'm hungry for or want to have. And that actually brings me to the next mistake I see people make, which is instead of choosing what you want to have, you always go for the option you think is most nutritious. Diet culture has really done a number on us when it comes to the health halo around certain foods, and it comes at the cost of enjoyment and satisfaction because these good for you or healthier alternatives are rarely on the same level as the original. Here's a short list of foods I'm talking about. These are things like brown rice, whole wheat bread, or whole grain options instead of white rice, white bread, or regular pasta. It's replacing your side dish with a vegetable or salad instead of fries, mashed potatoes, or another starch. And even things like eating a protein cookie or drinking a protein shake instead of having dessert or making a smoothie. Diet culture teaches us that we should always be leveling up, that everything we eat has to be jam-packed with nutrition as much as possible within the fewest number of calories. But these are just replacement foods. They're an empty stand-in for the thing we're actually craving. And I know this probably sounds weird coming from a dietitian, right? Like we're supposed to care about nutrition. And trust me, I do. But I don't care about it more than the other valid reasons that you might want to eat something. And there's a really important caveat in here too, and that's to leave room for taste preferences. If you genuinely prefer the taste and texture of brown rice, go for it. Or if you know adding a little protein to your smoothie will help you stay full until lunchtime, that's great. But the major difference here is you're not applying this across the board with no exceptions. Depending on the availability or your appetite or an infinite number of other factors that might be going on that day, you have the freedom to make a choice on a case-by-case basis. And you're honoring your personal taste preferences and individual nutrition needs without letting diet culture make that decision for you. So my best advice to avoid this mistake is to trust yourself. Know that you already generally know what is healthy and that nutrition doesn't need to be the only valid reason you decide to eat something or not. Okay, moving on to the next dieting trap I see people make all the time, which is thinking that in order to have better health, you must lose weight. Or to say that a slightly different way, it's thinking of weight as a good indicator of overall health. And this one is major because shifting your thinking around this in particular is a sign that you are actively and consciously pushing against literally everything the medical field has been telling us for decades at this point. Let's just pause and really think about it. Can you think of any reasons why someone might lose weight and have it lead to worse health? Maybe they're struggling with grief or an eating disorder or depression or another mental illness. Maybe it's a side effect of a medication or something else they don't have control over. And unexplained weight loss could even be the sign of a chronic or fatal illness, kind of like what we've seen with some high-profile cases. And it's only fair to flip that question around and also ask, what are some of the reasons someone might gain weight that lead to better health? Maybe they were really restricting their intake before or chronically dieting, and now their relationship with food is in a much better place. Maybe their financial situation has changed and they're finally able to buy and eat enough to adequately nourish themselves. Maybe they stopped compulsively exercising or overworking themselves, and now they can move their body with less pain and fewer injuries. The point is, we simply cannot gauge the health status of a person simply by looking at them. But the reality is, we live in such a fat-phobic society. It's constantly stigmatizing weight at every opportunity and trying to blame the individual. So it is nearly impossible to detach that association between weight and health unless we're actively making an effort to do that. Almost every diet out there will promise better health through weight loss, but the thing they never mention is the harm that can come from weight cycling and yo-yo dieting and the toll that can take on overall health and well-being. So to avoid this mistake and start reframing the way you think about weight and health, we're going to do a little more journaling. And I want you to ask yourself, how can I take good care of myself and my body that have nothing to do with dieting or eating less? What harmful or negative beliefs do I have about gaining weight or being fat? How does that impact my body image or determine the way I treat my body? And when I've tried to lose weight in the past, did I improve health in all areas of my life or did I just become thinner? And finally, the last big mistake I see people make when they're done with dieting is spending too much time around people who are very much wrapped up in diet culture. And it makes sense if we think about it, right? A lot of bonding happens over shared experiences. And since almost everyone has been on a diet at some point or another, in all likelihood, you've formed some relationships or spent a significant amount of time with people who have been there too. And I know this is tough because you can probably picture exactly who this is. Maybe it's your parents or your best friend or someone else that you really care about. And trust me, I'm not about to tell you to just completely cut them out of your life and isolate yourself. Instead, you might have to start setting some boundaries and enforcing them. And that can be a lot easier said than done, especially when we're surrounded by diet talk all the time. So I really want you to check out this video next because that's where I share some tried and true ways to shut down diet talk, and that will help you stay focused on healing your relationship with food whenever it comes up. I'm Cara, and I'm the dietitian behind Street Smart Nutrition. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in that next video soon.